hello again, and welcome to ManchTalk. I'm Tammy Simmons.
And I'm Carla Garrick.
And we took last week off. You probably don't know that Carla was away camping up north, I decided to be a slacker and not do anything.
I actually didn't, I wasn't sure, and then, I was up for the Porcupine Freedom Festival with 1,200 of my closest friends, and we had a wonderful time, but it occurred to me.
No, I knew it wasn't on
I was like, I didn't even let her know I'm not coming, but I knew you knew where I was.
I think it was the night before, and I was like, oh, should I try to get Victoria? I could get, and then I was like, or I just won't, because it was hot.
Oh my goodness, it was hot.
So I was like, yeah, if I don't have
You know how hot, it's not called the Granite State on accident. Yeah. So trying to hit in the stakes for these little pop-up tents that we had, 10 feet apart on the field. We were doing some new spacing and some new things, and Tuesday was insane. It was like too hot. Yeah. I officially felt like a Granite Stater, a North Countryer, all of that stuff. I mean, I'm from Africa. I'm used to hot weather, and apparently I've acclimatized because I was like, no thank you.
Well, even this morning, when I woke up this morning, it was 64 degrees, right? We sleep with the air conditioner on for a variety of reasons, but anyways, Google says this morning when he's waking up Dan that it's 64 degrees with a high today of like 73 or 74. And I came downstairs and I opened the kitchen door and I'm sitting there reading the newspaper online and I'm thinking, God, it's warm. And then I realized, well, if I just open up the windows and turn on a fan, because I'm thinking, I really don't think I should put the air conditioner on at 64, but it's clammy, so
I like to, once the air con's on, we just kind of leave it on for the season.
We leave the upstairs on all the time because, well, I did shut it off this morning because it did seem stupid since it's only going to be 74, but, yeah, Dan would live in the air conditioning like all day.
Yeah, Louie likes it too. So before I forget, I'm doing a plug. My book is out. This is the
paper book.
This is the author's, the proof copy. So it still has the not for sale band on it, but you can now get the Ecstatic Pessimist on Amazon. It is available on Kindle for $9.99, and the book is $15.99.
That's cheap.
It includes my short stories, award-winning short stories from my MFA when I did my master's in creative writing at City College in New York. And then it has lots of essays sort of about some of the activism I've done over the years here in New Hampshire. So anyone who's curious about what I think about things, this is what you want.
So it's exciting. It's good, and you picked good colors.
Yeah, it's my dad and I had a running joke over all the years. I dedicated this to my parents. Yeah. It actually includes a lot of creative nonfiction, so essays about growing up, boarding school, some of that stuff. So it's an amalgamation, or as Nick Gillespie said from Reason magazine, he said it is a fascinating combination of writing because it has some short stories and personal essays and opinion pieces. But I'm very proud that it's finally out. The next one is already in the works. Awesome. And so this one was a little bit of a test.
Yeah.
So what I was going to say is my dad and I have had a running joke over the years of what makes a good book cover.
Yeah.
And we've always said it's crazy colors that pop and clash. And he would always say he would just go into bookstores and look for those colors. So this is actually almost, an inside joke. But I love it. Get it. The Ecstatic Pessimist, Amazon. Make me a bestseller. If you like it, write a review. If you don't like it, don't write a review.
Oh, yay. Well, that's exciting.
Yeah.
That's exciting. I know two people. I probably know more than two people, but I know two people who have written books. That and former state rep Mike Ball from Manchester. His son writes sci-fi.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Stephen Ball has, I think he's only got one book out, but I think he's got another one. And he's Dan read it, and he said it was a really good book. So there's
a writer out in Weir, actually, who writes sci-fi. I think he just finished a trilogy. He's a mover, and he won the Hugo Award, which is a really big sci-fi award. He just raised $42,000 on Kickstarter or GoFundMe or something to write the third book in the trilogy. So I'm like, okay, I got to get in on that action.
I got to figure that part out.
I was like, I need to stop being a real life Katniss Everdeen and just write about characters that do these things.
So while you were gone, let's see what happened.
Terrible things, I'm sure.
I don't know if this was while you were gone or just before you were gone. So the governor lifted the stay-at-home order, which means that people are supposed to go back to work. There's no reason not to go back to work. They still do say if you're caring for, I mean, it is hard for people with childcare, although there are childcare facilities open. Day camps can open, overnight camps can open. Read a lot about problems or complications with the overnight camps because the restrictions say that they have to test everybody before attending, which I'm not sure I'm totally against, because I'm thinking, geez, if I'm sending my kid into this camp for who knows how long, I'd like to know that there's nobody else with COVID. But then they have to test again while they're there, and again, I'm like, okay, maybe. But I'm hearing that the camps are saying they're expected to pay for the tests themselves, which makes no sense to me.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. So one of the things that I saw, and I can just tell a very brief, quick story. So before I went up for Pork Fest up in the North Country, I wanted to have my nails done, and I wanted a mani-pedi.
Yeah.
Okay,
so
call me
mani-pedi.
Right. And
you can only do one at a time, right?
And well, no, you can do both, but you have to wear a mask, you have to sign a waiver, you have to do all these things. So I had called my regular place, and when I called and made an appointment, they didn't say anything. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. I'm not going to be irked and annoyed when I get there, right? But then I got there, and there was a one-page contract I had to sign. I didn't have my reading glasses, so it's kind of like, okay, I think, whatever. And then, so I was like, okay, we're done. And then I was picking my colors, and the lady says, oh, you don't touch the bottles, bottles. And I was like, oh, okay. And then they were like, oh, and you need to put on a mask. Now, I don't like masks for various reasons, besides the fact that, if you actually look at the science and not just at what people are spouting, most of them don't work. Certainly a cloth over your face, which is one of the things we're hearing, does not work. The surgical masks work for surgical, clinical situations, don't actually work exactly. The N95s actually will spray out fumigants and stuff because that's what they're designed for. So really, none of us know. So for me, I'm of the opinion that masks at this stage are just sort of a device, a virtue signaling, if you will, right? So I don't think the science is there to force me to do it, and it makes me gag, and I think it's gross, and I don't want to do it. So I don't want to go to places that make me do it, that force me to do something I don't want to do. I'm not going to spend money with those places. So I expressed my preference, which was I prefer, and please also note, you're sitting behind a plexiglass shield
for hands,
right? For the hands and the feet. Okay, they had them over everything. More. So there's a lot of protection. Mm-hmm. The people who are doing this service have always worn masks since I've gone there. It's just been a thing that they do. So I was just like, well, my preference is I don't want to wear a mask, and he was like, we won't serve you. So I got kicked out of my regular place, which I will not go back to. Right. Then I had a meltdown. I was in the car, and I called my husband, and I'm crying, and I was like, I just want to have my nails done. Which I understand, again, is not the end of the world, folks. Right. I get it. But then I was like, ugh, now I have to,
figure out something else.
And so it's a pain in the butt. And once again, it's not like any of these things. There is a solid reason for it. Everyone is just thumb sucking at this stage and making stuff up and saying this or doing that, instead of just saying, let's allow the market and ideas to work by actually saying, everyone do what your preference is. If you're a store or a place that just doesn't want to comply, don't. Right. Your customers will find yourself.
Well, I found the same thing. I think this was while you were away. So Dan and I went over. Had I gone to the beach before you left? Talk about disgusting. So we went over to Hampton Beach one morning, early, like 6:30 in the morning, right? Let's take the dog early, early, early. First of all, if you're going to go to the beach, plan on going at like 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning because the parking runs out, which is insane.
because they shut down 90% of it,
beach,
right?
This is the weekend, the first weekend after they had opened, and we were there on a Sunday morning. The place was filthy disgusting, like to the point that, well, I don't need to do that again this summer. If that was the goal, it worked. But we went into Portsmouth, and on
Like just litter or?
oh, disgusting. Like, you know how when you come up out of the beach, there's trash cans?
Right.
Okay, they were like,
Overflow.
no, like not even, you could have filled a dumpster at each one of them. It was
Wow.
disgusting. And then on the beach, there was just
So
stuff.
is that just the city not providing the
and
services
that's
that you're
what,
paying for?
I was
You know?
trying to inquire because, one, people don't need to be pigs. If you have your bag of trash and you get to the trash can and the trash can is obviously overflowed, just take your trash with you in your car and throw it away someplace else. But, I mean, there were chairs and there were fireworks boxes. I mean,
Please stop with the fireworks, people.
It was just like, and it was everywhere. It was disgusting.
Wow.
So then I did read that normally there's like 40 to 50 seasonal employees. The bathrooms, on the other hand, were spotless. But 40 to 50 employees that usually work the beach, yeah, and they have like 9. So there's that problem. So the part.
Oh, and could that be because you can make more
Yes.
money sitting at
And
home on the
so
dole?
They, I don't know. I think it did improve last weekend, but it's just, you know, there's all these unintended consequences of a lot of the things that are happening. But anyways,
Well, let's talk about some of that. So one of the unintended consequences that I read about, Portsmouth, tourism.
That was where we were.
So
Portsmouth's
tourism
terrible.
is down significantly,
Yes.
right? This is how the state makes its money. I think they said they're at, I wrote it down actually somewhere. I think it was, they're at 10%.
the state or Portsmouth.
No, Portsmouth
Yeah.
specifically.
Well, Portsmouth is-
So New Hampshire tourism is down 14%. It's the first time it's declined
Yeah.
in more than a decade. And Portsmouth is at a 10% occupancy rate, and it would usually be at 90%.
Yeah, so the day we went to the beach, we wasted a little bit of time because there's a game store now. The day before this, on Saturday, we had been down in Londonderry and we went to go in a game store down there. Not a priority or anything, but we like to spend money in local businesses. And
Living, people.
Right.
Like, we don't also have to
And
disclaim the
I
things we
realize
love
that
to
I'm
do.
I can be an ornery person. I am. I'm the friendliest person in the world, but boy, if you get me on that right line, I'm abrupt. So we walked into the game store in Londonderry, and the guys were wearing the masks because they're required to by the state, whatever. And he says, we have masks you can put on. And I said, oh yeah, because I had a bad experience. I wore a mask to get my pedicure because the girl I work with, you know, there's a lot of stories. She doesn't have a shield, so that's interesting. But that wall. And it caused me to get a flare up from my psoriasis because I was so hot that I thought, I can't do that. I mean, I can, and people at home might not understand it, but when you have psoriasis and your skin just starts, you know, flaking and scaling, I'm not willing to do something that I don't know what I'm doing it for that's causing me a different medical problem. So I'm just kind of obstinate now and stubborn. So I went into the game store and he said, there's masks to put on. And I just looked at Dan and said, I'm not doing it. You can shop if you want. I'll go wait in the car. And Dan's like, no. And I was just like, okay, fine, whatever. There's not a lot of people in there. We don't get that close to the people. We're going to go over and look at games, which has nothing to do with me breathing. And then we would have checked out and we probably would have spent money because we usually do.
Right.
So then on Sunday when we were at the beach, we went to Portsmouth and because there's a great game store there. So we went there, we waited for them to be open. And we did notice in different towns, the attitude is different. Portsmouth is definitely all masks, like everybody's super paranoid.
I mean, you can even see the division. I hate to say it, but it is
Politically, very political.
Democrat
So,
versus Republican. It's
we
very
wait-
like the state
we
is right.
wait patiently. They've got a sign on their door that says all dogs are welcome. I go, oh, Dan, go get Jenny. You know, like, hey, we're going to go in with Jenny. We walk in the door and the guy's got a mask on, which is fine. And he said, do you have a mask you can put on? And honestly, I was like, no, I don't. And he goes, okay, well, we can sell you one for $1.
Dollar. Yep.
And I looked at him and I go, well, 1, no. And 2, I just wanted to spend my money and I'm done now. So and Dan just looked at the guy like,
I mean,
she's
that's
done.
that was what I was going to add with the nail thing. So the first place where they asked me to leave in the end, was the same thing, and I think that was just the final line. So the services were all $4 more expensive, I assume, to pay for the plastic and all of that. But then he was like, and you must wear a mask, and it's $1.
Because they
I was
have
just
to
like,
buy
nope,
them,
I'm done. Right, but that's
just,
part of that unintended
So
cost.
Dan had a good point. Now, if the people own that, I mean, obviously businesses can make their own decisions, but I just don't know if these are sound decisions, because that store that is requiring you or me to wear a mask has lost our business. The person who does feel like they should be wearing a mask will still go to a business that isn't requiring. Do you know what I mean? Like, if I'm wearing a mask,
Right.
I'm still going to go in the store that isn't mandating that people wear a mask, because you'll have a mask on, the cashiers have a mask on. So it doesn't work in both directions. And I'm like,
can I just also say something, because this is driving me insane? You know, germs aren't like automatic. Like, even if I have COVID and I cough on you,
it's not guaranteed.
It's still a very minuscule chance that we're going to spread the disease. So when people look at this issue, please also don't go with the logic of, oh my goodness, you know, if this person has it, now you're going to give it to this person, is going to give it to this person, is going to give it to this person. It's not a guarantee. No. Those little links are 0.000000000 chances of it spreading.
One thing that they don't talk about enough, I don't think. See, I have this is my gripe. One of my biggest gripes is the lack of actual objective information. All along, for months now, Dan and I had been watching when it was still not even in the United States, or at least not identified in the United States. You know, there's different things that factor into this. And one of the ones that you don't hear enough about is viral load. Because now they don't believe that surface contact has a whole lot to do with anything. Yes, it is still in the realm of possibility that I have COVID, I touch something, it's still there, somebody touches this, but it's so small. And they're saying 20% of the transmission it's coming from 20% of the people who have is going to 80% of the people catching it. So it's not every single person who has COVID is giving it to all these other people, because they're saying, okay, this is a breath thing. So when you breathe out, when you're talking, you give off big droplets. And big droplets go out and they drop to the ground. Then there's little droplets, the aerosol droplets, but those big droplets tend to break up. Now the big droplets also tend to have more virus. So the little droplets hardly have any virus, and they're just little. So they can go through the mask, right? But you'd have to breathe in so many of them. The big droplets, I guess if I sneeze right in your face, there's ways, right? And then when the big droplets break up, they become these medium-sized droplets, but still with the high load of virus. So if you start thinking about all that, passing somebody in the grocery store is not how you're going to catch COVID. I feel bad for the people who are in contact 8 hours a day for their job. The dentists, the nail technician who doesn't have enough protection or whatever. Those people are more likely to get it, because they're right there. The nursing home worker who's working with people like this because they're washing them and they're feeding them and things like that. Well, you don't hear enough about viral load.
But once again, it's, we could have approached this by actually trying to
teach people what
Well, first of all, one of the interesting conversations over the past week was this realization that I think there's an entire generation of people who just don't understand how germs work,
right,
how viruses work,
basic
how
stuff,
things work.
Things.
So when one group of people are telling you, oh, be scared, do this, whatever, because there's no consequence to them picking the most safest route. Right. Like they're not the ones losing their business. Right. No one from the government lost their jobs. Hello, no one's business went under. Everyone's getting their nice bennies and their pensions and their pays. And so there's no consequence to saying, let's do these things, right? But normal people are like, well, I got to live my life. But for those of us who are maybe a little older, or had better educations, or grew up, or had a grandma who taught you about viruses, from the start, I was just like, look, something here doesn't make sense to me. Unless this is an actual bioweapon.
Right.
Conversation for another day.
Discussion.
Right? There was no reason for this response. And there's no reason to perpetuate the problem.
Well, that's the thing. That's the second. Keep going. I'm sorry.
No, and I'm just like, I'm already seeing in, this sort of push because the numbers are going up. The numbers are obviously going to go up because testing is going up. It's not really that deaths are going up.
No.
So it's like they've shifted the goalposts, right? They were like, let's terrify people with mass hysteria. Now we have to sustain that because God knows the government will never say, oops, we made a mistake. We're sorry. How can we fix this and do it right going forward? They can't do that. They're incapable of that, which is part of the problem. So now we're just kind of stuck with this thing where they have to like double down or at least be like, we got to keep doing this because if we don't, then people are going to notice we did the wrong thing.
The misinformation, the lack of information, and then this desire to perpetuate the fear. So, different states, first of all, just want to remind people that most of these openings in different states was right around Memorial Day. The day after was when all the riots started and the protests. And everybody watched it and said, well, wait a minute, the people aren't wearing masks. So now they're saying, oh, it's all because we opened up on Memorial Day. And it's like, what? So now Mayor de Blasio in New York City, they're doing the contact tracing thing. They are instructed not to ask if people attended a protest. Why would you not want to know that? Why would you not want to know that that's potentially where this increase came from? Then there's states that you'll hear about constantly in the news. Texas, Florida, Arizona. Oh, they have a spike. Now, they don't have a spike in deaths, which is interesting, in particular in Florida, where you have many, 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 many old people. The spike is in younger people, 30 and under, which probably is because of opening up, because people were like, I got to get on with life, and they started going out to bars, and they're going to the beaches, and they're hanging out with everybody, and those case numbers, those positives went up. We're also increasing testing. We're always increasing testing.
So but here in Manchester, they want to start doing...
They're recommending everybody in Manchester be tested. And I'm like, for what? For why? What's the point? And if the health department came out and said, look, blah, 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 here's this thing, and here's this theory, and here is what we need to know, and this information will provide us with this. So based on all this information, we'd like you to consider being tested. Then at least people could make informed decisions and say, well, that makes sense.
But you see,
I cannot come up with a good sound understanding of what it does to benefit anybody for you and I today to know whether or not we have COVID today.
Well, it's not even just that for me. I mean, I'm at the stage, call me skeptical, but I think this entire response was wrong from the start, right? We've talked about this a lot, but I've basically said from the start, either we're free human beings or the state owns us and we're slaves to the state. I think based on the responses we've seen, we're slaves to the state. So if we don't have any ground rules anymore for how our relationship is supposed to be with the government, then I'm very curious as to why anyone would trust them. We've always had the HIPAA laws, and we've said your medical history is something that's private between you and your doctor, like your legal advice is private between you and your lawyer.
Right.
And over the years, we've seen those things erode. We know for a fact with this COVID situation, first responders were given information that they should not legally have gotten with regard to your medical records. Now, make no mistake, they may be saying they're just passing this part of the information on. But one, why believe them? Two, why trust them? Three, how do you know it's just going to be that thing? Then four comes into it, right? So we know based on history, things like the Second World War, the persecution of the Jews, the gypsies, the nomads, the others, the people they don't like, someone like me, a dissident. So now they say, well,
we should all get tested.
We have these lists now, and now we have these lists, and we're like, oh, here's this group of people we really just don't like. They're too loud. We don't like their message. We don't whatever. And then it's like, why would I voluntarily give this information? And
who knows for what? Right?
How is it going to be used? I have zero trust in the government anymore. Zero. I've always played along. I've always been like, look, I get it. I'm at the stage where I'm like, we either have rule of law, which means we have a constitution of this country, and we have a constitution of the state of New Hampshire, and we follow it, or we are now slaves to the government, and someone's going to have to make a very cogent argument to me as to how we're not slaves to the government.
So we only have like 4 or 5 minutes left, but interesting thing for people to watch on their own, and maybe we can talk about it more next week, is this censoring of voices. Now, it doesn't matter what your opinion is. I don't care if I don't have to agree with somebody with an opposing opinion. I would argue that they have the right to talk about their opposing opinion just as much as I do. That's what the First Amendment's about. That's what freedom of speech is.
That is what free speech is.
It's a simple, basic
free speech
concept.
Exists for ideas that you find deplorable.
Right.
That is the point, is you get to say what you believe, I get to say what I believe.
Sometimes listening to people with differing views makes you think about, that is one of the big, when I always say this, if you're going to be a good legislator, one of the first things you have to be willing to do is listen to other people, because I can't just go up there and it's all about what Tammy believes, because I'm there to represent other people, and you have to listen to people, and you have to consider other points of view, and you do learn. Anybody who thinks they know everything about everything is lying. So in the media, so Twitch, which I don't use or anything, Twitch yesterday deleted Donald Trump's account. You deleted an account of the President of the United States because you don't like what he's saying. And I don't have time to research more, but there's a philosopher type, more libertarian philosopher, although the libertarians,
I think he jumped the
shark. I was going to say,
the
libertarians are done with him because he became a huge Trump supporter. Seems to be a thread there. He's got a huge YouTube following. 1 million plus subscribers, huge, 14 years of videos, thousands of videos. YouTube literally deleted all of it and shut him off yesterday. And he is not a violent person. That's the thing. You're not somebody out there spewing violence, saying go kill people or anything. You're just saying, let's talk about things. And even if they're not things you agree with. So I bet you have to watch in the next week or two the things we find out about who else is getting shut down. And that should be something that makes the hair on people's necks stand up.
To me, it's very troubling. It's very troubling, the direction that the world is going in, but certainly America and even the Granite State. I always held out hope that we could have this one little place where we could do better. I don't know, man.
You know what's scary? We probably are doing better. Imagine how much worse it is in these other places.
True.
So... yeah.
Except we decimated the backbone of what makes the Granite State great, which is small businesses, allowing people to be free to decide what they want to do with their lives and living in peace and harmony with our neighbors by allowing us all to be free.
It's kind of tough. We don't have time. We're out of time today.
We're out of time. We didn't know this was going to be a COVID one.
It always ends up being something different than what we thought. If you have any ideas, if you have any input, if you think there's something we should talk about, email us at ManchTalk@gmail.com. Go to Amazon and buy the Ecstatic Pessimist.
Stories of Hope.
Yep, by
mostly.
Carla Garrick. That would be wonderful. And get out there and enjoy the weather. I've made it a point I've got 5 Fridays running. Every Friday night I go kayaking. Get out there and walk. There's tons of great places, even just in the city. And if you feel the need to wear a mask while you're out walking, please, by all means do. But get out and exercise, because I think being healthy is more important than anything else at this point. That's all we got. We'll be gone till next week, and then we'll see you then. Bye.
Bye, guys.